Okay, so let's take a look here real quick at something. So we'll start at the front here. Um, okay, so I'm gonna start like from your setup into your toast. So usually I consider like setup like comfortable position. So it's just before you get into that full lean out forward. So it's probably, somewhere around here, and my toast kind of going more twisting and leaning forward into here. So look at my motion. I want you to think more along the lines of I'm moving my body forward. Everything's kind of moving forward to grab the water in front. If you look here, going from your setup, your body's moving forward, but your arm kind of is moving up. So I want you to already be kind of in from that position instead of like aiming up with the top arm. So your top arm should be moving forward along with your lower arm. So both of your hands right now are kind of moving upwards a little bit, right? So try to go from your setup position. You just want to go forward. Think about grabbing water forward. Okay? So I would say that's the biggest difference between my setup to toast here. You can see our bodies are probably doing something similar, but your arms are kind of moving differently, right? Okay? So next thing, now when we go into the catch, right? So right here is the toast. So I'm going to draw a line for both of us connecting the ear to the hip. So end of the toast is usually right before we start going down into the catch. So right there is where you start your catch. Okay. So obviously one of the fixes you're going to try to do is lower your arms like maybe 1 or 2 inches. And that'll be fixed by just thinking about grabbing forward, right? Let me actually lock these together so they're moving together. Okay.
Oh my God, my hand is so high.
That's fine. I think a little bit high is okay. I think one of the things you want to just mainly be careful about is making sure that your top arm is set. So I think what I'm looking kind of I guess one thing that I am noticing right now is like the amount of twist. A little bit more twist I think will be good for you. But when you're going into your catch right here, this one's a little bit more. I'm trying to think of right now the best way to explain this portion. Okay. So, 2 things I would change. Like a little bit of arm bend is okay, but I think this arm is bent a little bit more than it should be. I'm trying to see how your paddle angle kind of goes through the catch portion here. So if we were to like go frame by frame, and then also I like to look at how this top hand portion looks as we go through the stroke. So I think that's what I was trying to pinpoint right here. I think you'll see it much more clearly as I go through this. So as I go through this, you'll see that my top hand never kind of breaches the line from previous, right? Because you're really trying to make sure that the pivot point of your paddle, entire paddle, is the top. Mm-hmm. So if that is the case, it should never cross the line from a previous freeze frame. So I think just at the very beginning, your top arm is straightening just a little bit and your lower arm bends a little bit, and that causes the pivot point of your paddle to be somewhere like in the middle, just for that first little part of your stroke. And when you do that, you're gonna lose a little bit of the leverage. So I would say try to keep your lower arm a little bit more straight through that portion, because I don't see your top arm like pushing out too much. I think another thing that's gonna help, so lower arm straighter and then a little bit more twist. So that's, I would say, probably the biggest difference in the catch right here. So when we get into this catch position, you can see your back is not quite as much turned to the camera as mine, right?
Right.
So that's going to create a differential in your paddle angle into the very next portion. Because right here, so right at this moment, so you can see your top hand kind of crosses that line. See, now we have that crossing point there. So your pivot point was probably a little bit up here. And you can see my top hand follows right along that line, right? So it never crosses that line that I initially set. Okay. So the lower arm is not bent too badly, but that's one thing that'll help, and then a little bit more twist will help too. Okay. So this part here, I think once you get into it, you don't have as big of an issue. You can see that crossing point only happens at the very beginning of your catch. So I think that's the main part that you want to work on a little bit. I think the only other thing that I don't think you're pulling too far, actually. It's not too bad. Like, I see you're cutting off power on your hip. That's generally where you want to be. And not forcing it too far back. Let me sync up our exit here. So I come out.
I think when you're complete with your stroke, you still have your your core moving, turning.
Okay, let me time this up and then we can kind of look at it. Okay, so now we're gonna, oops. I don't know why it's not letting me, oh, there we go, okay. I'm gonna focus on the exit now. Okay, I think we will probably see this better in the front view, with what's going on with your hands, arms at the exit. But you can kind of see from the side view here, as we go into the exit, we're kind of doing something similar. But as we pull out and exit, you can see your top hand here kind of just stays there, and then your lower arm opens up around this way, whereas I'm exiting and pulling my top hand this way. So we'll see that in the front view in a second, but if you look carefully right here, see your top hand kind of stays low in that position, right? Whereas if you look here, my top hand's coming. So right there, that little difference between what your top hand does right there and what my top hand does there. Okay, so let's go to the front view. I think you'll get a better idea when I move to the front view. Okay. Okay, so front view. Let's go finish the stroke. Okay. elbows. And the camera's moving still. Okay, right here. Okay. Okay. So we can see a couple other things from the front view as well. I'd like your inflection point to be your elbow here. So your elbow should lead out a little bit more. So watch as I go into the follow through, I'm relaxing. I'm trying to turn the momentum around. And I want you to use kind of like an elbow shrug. So you can see your elbow kind of stays a little bit more stiff.
Yes.
Right? I like that your wrist is nice and loose. Both of our wrists are nice and loose here. But you're kind of holding some tension in the elbow there. Okay? Now next is looking at the top hand. So both of our top hands are around here, right? So look at the motion. See how my top hand is coming across and up, and your top hand stays on that side, right? So you'll be a little bit more relaxed if you let your top hand come across this way, so that when you get into, let's say this is the 2 position here, I want my hands to be kind of neutral in front of me, right? And if you get into your 2 position and you have to hold your hand here versus here, there's a little bit of back tension. There's a little bit of back tension just because you're having your hand on this side. Okay. So you can see, like, when we go into this 2 position, what I'm looking for in my body, like you can see my shoulder, it's a little bit hard to tell, but your shoulders are a little bit more tense, and it's still a little bit hung back.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so I think it has to do with how you're holding your top hand out at that position. Okay? So one last thing. So I think this will be the 3rd item. One last item. Now it might be fixed when you let your top hand come across a little bit more, but right now when you're coming up,
It's going very high up.
yeah. So I want you to be more efficient, right? So you want to get into a position where your top hand only goes as high as it needs to, and then it's set right here. Right now you're kind of coming up and then down. So I know we've talked about downward pressure, but you want to make sure the downward pressure comes from the body getting on it versus just your arms, right? So right here, you can see your elbow starts pointing up here, and then now you're set here. So this is the strong position. And your body naturally knows that, and that's why you get into that position. I know let me sync this up. So you can see when we both get into the catch here, right? You can see our top arm is very similar. It's about making sure that we're efficient getting there. Okay? So I'm going to move through this portion again so we can kind of look at so that you have like a good video here to see some of the differences. So right here, obviously your top hand's still pretty low, and then it's almost like your elbow raises first, right? You can see I guess at some point like at the beginning of the exit, my elbow is coming up first. But especially when you get to this midpoint in the 2 position, as you're transitioning through here, you already don't want to have the elbow up higher than your hand here.
Yes, I see that.
Okay. But yeah, I think that's the general. I think you probably get the gist of it. I don't want to keep talking about that recovery. I think you already visually see what to adjust there. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow, this is nice.